Welcome everyone to the Omniverse of Nick and part 3 to What If Casey Becker Survived. And hopefully you really love the Troy intro, and there's going to be a sick outro to it as well, be it blocked in Belarus and Russia. But that's a small problem and besides the point as to today's episode and overall thing. Before that, be sure to like the video, smash that like button, and subscribe to the Omniverse of Nick so you can make this channel bigger, better, and get more awesome stories pumping out and make me happy, you happy, and all that fun stuff. With that, let's pick up where we left off from the last part of the Casey story. Billy has just gotten into conflict with Casey being revealed as one of the ghost faces who just attacked and killed Tatum and Kenny and, that. Randy's the first to pluck up the overall shock and scaredness of the moment, but Billy says he's not who they should be focused on. And the other ghost face appears right next to him. And Billy says it's all thanks to this guy here that him and a certain other person are out of jail. And he was right. Or they were right, rather, when they said it didn't matter what plan they chose. They're still in trouble as they speak. And the two officers from Scream 2 are killed inside the hospital right after he says this, showing a third ghost face. Mark Kincaid is there on the scene in the hospital to protect Sydney, because it's Scream 3 territory, obviously. And whenever Ghostface kills those two officers and shows himself, Mark Kincaid fights him off and reveals Stu Mocker under the mask, actually landing a shot. Mark is very, he's surprised, but Sydney's way more surprised and actually leaps from the hospital bed. Stu just soaks it all in because it's Stu frickin' Mocker and says, yeah, probably shoulda just either not put Billy in jail or shoulda killed them both. Because now they gotta deal with all three of them. And if Sydney knows what's best for her, she'll come alone and sort this all out herself. But Dewey comes in right after he says this, and Stu just dips. He gets out of there, leaving everyone to soak in Kenny and Tatum's deaths, along with the two officers who risked their lives. And now they got to deal with the fact that Billy and Stu are out of jail with a mysterious new accomplice. And Casey, obviously, is the main one affected by all of this, because she is the reason that all of this started. It was her survival that ultimately caused this to happen. She is not liking it. But Gail, she says, who could that mysterious third person be? And how did he get them out of jail? Or was Billy and Stu just talking? They couldn't have escaped, so it must have been that guy, but how did they not hear anything about it? There's just too many questions without any answers. And Dewey asks, why should she care? It's obvious what's going on here. Clearly they didn't escape because they didn't hear anything about it, and Dewey pretty much just lays into Gail because, like I said, he doesn't really like her that much. The problem is that they need to assess the situation and go together to deal with it. But Casey then speaks up, saying that this is her fault. Her survival is what brought this all and them all in danger and everything. She'll go to face them alone. Sydney quietly is in shock while everyone's in complete shock, but Casey just starts bawling and says that half of her wishes she hadn't escaped life that night because they're being haunted by Billy and Stu returning with this third person, and they just lost Tatum and other people and putting them in danger. She has to do this. But Sydney speaks up and says no. She is not going to face Billy, Stu, and this third person. Sydney is. And everyone is in shock and no! Randy, Gail, Dewey and Mark are all like, why? You should want backup. You should want support in this moment. You can't do this alone. You saw what they did, what they were like. 3 of them on by yourself. You couldn't even take on one alone. They're not trying to be mean, but they're saying that she can't do this alone. But Sydney says she has to. She literally has to. Casey might have survived that night, but it's not on her. Billy and Stu want her. She still doesn't understand what they meant by her mother and who this new third person is. What's going on? All she knows is that they want her, and Stu said for her to come alone. She clearly has to, but Casey fights back, saying that she's the one that they were after first. They might have done it to lure Sydney out and get her, but even if that's true, it's her that they originally wanted. They said they'd come for her next. And Sydney smiles, saying she knows that, but she doesn't want to put Casey in any more danger than she's already has been. She knows what she went through with Steve, what she's been through as a whole. And everyone else, including her, she doesn't want her to be put through any more trauma or any more life-threatening events. And honestly, Sydney doesn't feel she deserves it either, but what other choice do they have? If they go all together, it's more people being put in danger. Sydney won't let that happen. She has to do it alone. Being killed or not, she's going alone. Dewey tries to plead with her, but even he knows that it's fallen on deaf ears. Sydney's mind is made up, and she has had good time to recover, and she wasn't critically injured. So it's not like it's totally madness, but they don't want her to go. And Mark says, are you sure you don't want at least one person watching your back? Going alone it's not sensible. But Sydney says no, it is sensible. Because going all of them together, true, they would have a huge numbers advantage, but that didn't help when Tatum and the others were killed. She has to go alone. And she does. Everyone is left to stew amongst these thoughts. And Dewey is like, really? Even after all that, you're the last one who spoke to her. You really let her run? And Mark tells Dewey, what more did you expect me to do? You, me, everyone, we couldn't get even a moment of clarity from her. She needs, wants, and ultimately has to do this alone, ultimately. But Dewey says it's ultimately madness because they don't know who this third person is. She's walking into a death trap. And Mark says he knows this more than anybody. And he has looked into Sydney and her mother and everything more than probably anyone else here. But that's not going to... Nothing he says or anyone who said or does is going to stop Sydney's resolve. She is determined to do this alone. But even he knows she's walking into a trap. Casey just gets more and more worried by the second with these words and just wants to go after her. But Mark tells her to refrain from it very profusely because, as Sydney said, Casey might have been the first one targeted, but it started with Sydney's mother. It ultimately, even he has to agree, end with Sydney. It really is her. Randy says how stupid that is, and even Gail's like, why shouldn't they go? Especially considering they don't know who this third person is, how Billy and Stu got out, and these are very important details left untouched. And Dewey just lambasts Gail more, and it's like, why do you want to go? What? Your cameraman's death wasn't enough for you to see how serious the situation is? You just want to get more shots! And this would be very funny to see. Also, it's Dewey, kind of coping with the death of his sister that led to this. It was because they had to go protect Gail and Kenny that resulted in Tatum dying. So, yeah. Mark just finds this all funny. Well, for a moment, because obviously it's a poor moment to be laughing. But, it's a good / terrible moment to laugh, really. Meanwhile, Sydney has gotten to the location in which she thinks that Stu, Billy, and whoever else is, with gun in hand. and yells out to whoever might be there to come out. Now. And a ghost face surprises her from behind a wall, but Sydney just takes that crap like a champ and kicks Ghostface down to the ground, revealing Stu Macher. And Sydney still can't wrap her head around the fact that Stu's out of jail, and aims her gun ready to shoot, saying she wants to know how he got out, where Billy is, how they became killers, and why it all revolves around killing her, Casey, and she has so many questions, and she really doesn't care how they're answered. Stu looks at her all crazy-eyed and is like, "You're not gonna shoot me, nor are you gonna shoot Billy. And why wouldn't we be killers? Honestly, it was all thanks to our old pal here inside that helped us out. Especially considering the fact that we ain't gonna kill you yet, because you don't even know what happened to your mom." Sydney raises her gun in question, and Stu's like, "You mean you never knew the truth?" And Stu says that just makes the moment even better, and says that they ain't gonna kill her yet, but though they plan to. Although it's went far differently than they planned, Stu says, "You're going inside that house there where you'll find out the whole truth before, booga, his whole Stu facade," and points inside a familiar house in Scream 3, and takes her gun away, because, we can't have you shooting at us before you find out the big reveal of it all. And it would be really cool to see Matthew Lillard, especially in a Scream 3 setting, and acting like that. It's typical Stu Macher. Sydney enters the house and is greeted first by Billy Loomis, saying, "Surprise, Sydney," and it's been a long time. Last time we reunited or talked, it was before your friend Casey put me in jail. And Sydney is like, she still can't believe her once old boyfriend is a killer, and she doesn't know how this all revolves to her or her mom, but says she wants to know everything about the truth now. And the third ghost face appears from behind a doorway and says, "Why should they tell you whenever your own brother can tell you?" And yep, I bet all of you already know who this is, but in case those of you who don't, who is this mysterious new ghost face? How did he get Billy and Stu out of jail? How did this all revolve to Sydney and her mom, with all of the changes that have happened in the Scream story? And with Sydney by herself, can she fend the three of them off, being at least a little bit more on to the whole killer vibe? Or will she either die or get saved by everyone else? Find out next time. You guys didn't think this was the end of the video, did you? Well, the Omniverse of Nick has a new feature. A sneak peek at what's next to arrive.